Thank you, everybody, for joining us after lunch. We know these are always the more challenging sessions, so hopefully it's cold enough in here to keep everybody awake. But as the theme is continued, throughout the week and will continue probably throughout 2026 and definitely around AI and how it's, really affecting people's buying habits, but also their selling habits. So we thought we'd put this panel together and talk through what's happening, how it's shifting buyers, and how it's shifting the mood of what's happening. So we have Lori, our CRO from Codal, and Lori leads our conversion and growth optimization. She translates consumer behavior into revenue decisions across the customer journey, and she specializes in spotting the friction hiding in plain sight, the kind that quietly costs both revenue and loyalty, and is currently building out how experimentation should evolve AI-powered customer experiences. And she brings data-grounded customer-first lens to the CX conversion. So thank you, Lori, for joining us. She came over from the UK, so we're very excited to have her.
Nice.
And then most of you know, but we also have Ali from Commerce. And he is not liking me very much because this is one of 20 times on stage I think he has this weekend. But if anyone knows Ali, his experience in e-commerce as a whole has expanded for quite a while. Enterprise sales, go-to-market strategy with prior roles at Adobe, Oracle, ATG, and then bringing that expertise obviously to BigCommerce and Commerce now. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Excited to be here. Thank you. Yes, I am still mad at you. Okay.
So we'll jump right in. Ali, we'll start with you.
Sure.
From your perspective, what are you actually seeing it improve when it comes to AI? What are you seeing it improve the customer experience from the platform side of things?
Yeah, it's a good question. And maybe I'll change a little bit. It's not necessarily from the platform side, but as commerce in whole, what we're seeing. When we think about our customers, we really have three segments that we sell in. We sell in three different theaters, the Americas, we sell in EMEA as well as APAC, but especially in our biggest market, which is here, we've got small business customers. Those are typically owner operator, or at least kind of one point of contact that you're working with, the smaller business, where the tech stack is largely the commerce platform. That is their whole world. There's mid-market businesses, and if you look at the median sort of size company, maybe they're several $100 million in total revenue. They're starting to have back office systems. They have more complexity. Commerce is a piece of that tech stack, maybe a large piece, but not the only piece. And then we sell to large enterprises, some of the biggest brands in the world like Nikes and Dells and Lululemons as an example. And those folks are very sophisticated and kind of mapping digital maturity to revenue size is not a one-to-one, but it's pretty good correlation between those. And so less digitally mature down here, very digitally mature up at the upper end. And so at that smaller segment of customers, those small business customers, they're largely like, I don't even know what to make of AI. I'm not sure what to do. I'm ready to fast follow, but I definitely don't want to be a leader. They're looking for tools within the platform like the companion that you saw earlier today to make their lives easier, to run their business, to merchandise, and to execute. In the mid-market, similarly, you see kind of that Goldilocks zone where they're looking to do some of that, and they're maybe also thinking about things like discoverability. And at the upper end, with the largest customers that we work with that are very digitally mature, they are absolutely thinking about how their products are showing up across agentic channels, how maybe agents are going to interact with their catalog, how their brand is represented across these different channels, and being able to enable transactions across these answer engines. So there's a level of FOMO, for lack of a better phrase. If you're one of the largest brands in the world, you don't want to be the marketing leader or commerce leader that doesn't have your products available to purchase through OpenAI or Perplexity or Gemini as an example. And that's just not an interest or a thing to think about down with some of these smaller customers.
Right. Yeah, I think the quote yesterday was robots selling to robots, buying from robots, and then the human in between. How does all that work, right? So I think that's what the larger companies are working through right now, and then some of the smaller ones are starting to follow their lead. So Lori, similar question to you. So from your perspective, where are you actually, AI seeing it improve the customer experience?
Yes, I think it's similar. It's sort of a mixed bag from what I've seen so far. So some of the wins have been through discovery, recommendations, search relevance, and personalization when it's attached to a friction point. And then some of the places where it's maybe like not done as well is, as an example, when people put AI powered chatbots and things onto their experiences when those are giving the wrong answer or not answering or sometimes providing harmful answers. And then when AI is being deployed just for the sake of deploying it. So from what I've seen anyway, the wins are really coming from when the AI reduces the kind of effort for people rather than increasing it. So.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. That makes sense, yeah. Ollie, anything to follow up on that?
No, I mean, similar kind of statement. One thing that Lori mentioned that's kind of interesting, and you may not think about commerce in this way, but we are largely an e-commerce company ourselves. We have a self-service component where roughly $100 million worth of our business pumps through that. We are selling the platform digitally to other folks. So we are, in fact, a commerce business. And we are enabling AI tools across the board to help us do some of the same things that our customers need to do. And the thing that you mentioned, which is really interesting, is there's so many tools in trying to navigate the waters of what makes sense, what doesn't. Across our whole enterprise, we have deployed AI, and sometimes I'm like, settle down, everybody. We need to rein in and really see what works. The art of the possible is a bit much, and so I think our customers are also working through a very similar thing where they're trying to figure out, okay, which sets of tools and what types of tooling do I need to really be successful? And it's not 100% clear right now.
Yeah, and that kind of just rolls into the next questions. What are you seeing from merchants when they're prioritizing from a customer experience? Like, which tools right now are you seeing truly make an impact?
Wait, specific tools for it?
Yeah, or Ollie, that you've seen from, your side of things.
On our side, a product that's going to be released, and Sharon talked some about this, is data enrichment. We're really seeing that our larger customers and even some of the B2B distributors and manufacturers that we're working with, some of the smaller customers are getting excited about this notion of being able to take the structured catalog content that they have, marrying that with unstructured data, pulling all that together to enrich their catalogs and syndicate that or push that information to any channel where their products are surfaced. In addition to, these answer engines are very Q&A based, right? So providing the context that helps feed that Q&A to make sure that when an answer engine is thinking about your product, that it shows up well. And so those types of tools are really interesting to them. In addition to that, there's this notion, and it's kind of early that we're seeing that folks want, is our world has been largely, if you're looking to globalize, around translations. And I speak Farsi not as well as I speak English, but I can tell you there's nuances in the language that when you try to translate English into Farsi, it doesn't quite land in the same way. And so the capabilities of some of the tooling that's out there and the things that we're thinking about are not translating the content, generating the content in the native language so that it's spot on and it represents the folks in that region and it's germane to them. So those are things that we see from our customers today that are actively leveraging data enrichment or want to leverage data enrichment to improve their experience for how their products are represented.
Yeah, we've heard some of those same concerns, and we're dealing with global clients and working and dealing in 100+ countries and languages and the same kind of thing. How do you make that all function properly so that it's relatable to where it's at? So, Lori, now a lot of friction and cost we know and revenue isn't predictable from data alone, right? So we know it can be hidden in the journey in ways most teams look over. So what are you seeing AI actually help surface for that kind of friction, and where does human judgment still have to lead?
Yeah, so a lot of the friction will usually sit outside of the UI. So it's going to be in things like complex pricing structures or issues with like order delays and that sort of thing. So one of the places that AI is having a benefit is helping you being able to do some pattern recognition and finding some of that stuff a bit quicker than at scale than you could do before, but still allows that human element in there. So you'll probably be seeing it being deployed through a lot more analytics platforms where you're able to sort of just use the chat assist to get the information that you need. So that can help you get to your patterns a lot quicker. But what's important with all of this is that you still allow for the human element because that provides the context. So with the AI, it doesn't really know that. So it still allows that judgment for the human to put in there because you know all of that information. But it's also important to know that if you are going to use those tools, you need to make sure that your measurement is very accurate because it's just going to pull what's there. So if it's not accurate, it's not going to give you an accurate result, if that makes sense.
Yeah, good info in, good info out, bad info in, bad info out, yeah.
Yeah, and I think about that. You heard Travis this morning talk about governance, and it's not something that you've maybe heard a lot from us, but it is an area where we really view the platform and what we provide as being a key element to what we can bring to our customers. And so, to your point, what the bots generate may or may not be valid. They may or may not make sense. You need a governance layer to ensure that you can inspect that content, that you can inspect what they're doing, whether that's creating code, govern that, and make sure that it's released properly. Similarly, within MakeSwift, Alan showed you a lot of capabilities and features that are wrapped around being able to generate content together. And then the next layer is governing that to ensure that it's the right thing that gets pushed out. As we fast forward, we're going to be able to prompt the MakeSwift editor to create content, and you're going to need humans to be able to interact to make sure it's fit for purpose and then push live. So I think governance is a big piece of the equation that's going to help with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Human bot, making sure that the human's got some control over what the bot pushes.
So we're not all losing our jobs then to robots?
I mean,
at least not yet, right?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I'll give you an interesting analogy. 15, 16 years ago, I worked at ATG, and we acquired a company called Cleverset. Cleverset was funded by the DoD and NIH, and it was a recommendations engine to predict infectious disease outbreak and to predict terrorist attacks. ATG, being a commerce company, acquired it and turned it into a recommendations engine. So they even wrote their own programming language. It wasn't programmed in anything that anyone had ever heard of. It was a very specific language, I guess, to make it not hackable by folks. But in any case, these were the early days of AI ML. So we've had a trend before where we had products that could do things that humans could do. And we had merchandisers that very much would look at the recommendations engine and go, I don't like it. And we would spend a lot of time with folks like Nike, Best Buy, trying to share with them why the recommendations engine is making suggestions that may not seem relevant to a human being. And it's like, well, because I'm parsing data, and I think that this particular cables should go with this DVD, and you're going to sell more of these if you bundle these products together. Or in Nike's case, it would always put socks with shoes. And the last thing Nike really wants to do is recommend a pair of $15 socks when they have a $150 or $250 pair of Jordans. They want to show you some other Jordans or other similar shoes. And so when you think about governance and what machines do, machines are going to pick what they think is right. Mm-hmm. But just like in this previous example of merchandising products through recommendations, all of the customers that we had said, look, the machine is great. It helps me. I get scale, and I like a lot of the recommendations. But as a company, we have certain standards and things that we want to promote. And I don't want to promote socks, and I want to be able to force certain recommendations in certain slots on different category pages or product detail pages, rather. So I think it's a similar model that we're going to see today, that I don't think our jobs are completely going away, but we're going to have to learn how to work with these tools, and hopefully it'll give us more scale.
And that's where the human element comes into play, right? And I think we were at a conference a few years ago where this was coming out, and there was a wine, food and beverage company that was starting to get into this. And you'd order a wine, and then it would have a recommendation based on the wine you ordered, and so on and so forth. And it was going the opposite, to what Ali was saying too. Like, it didn't want to give you another cheap bottle of wine. It's saying, no, have the $100 bottle. You just bought an $80 bottle. And so, again, that's the stuff where we can still be involved and help guide that and nurture it. So, and kind of moving on to the B2B side things now, Lori, we know that in mid-market, there's not always a lot of that heavy traffic flow to validate some of the ideas quickly. So how are you thinking about that problem, and where does AI genuinely help versus where it's still a bit overhyped?
Yeah, so low traffic volume with on-site testing has always been a known thing. You need, the more traffic you have, the faster your test will run. So you can get to a statistical standard where you can be confident that the results that you're measuring are gonna have a true impact out into the real world. And what AI can directionally help with that, from my point of view so far, is kind of acting like a pre-validation layer where you're able to sort of do some directional testing before you have to impact your live traffic. So an example of this would be through synthetic user testing, where you basically have simulated users based on your real data, and then you run simulated journeys on that. That will allow you to get a loose directional insight into some of the broader things on your experience, like design changes, like big, broad ones. But again, with another caveat with that, in general, the predictive AI is unlikely to ever really be fully accurate or reliable, because you need very, very, very large data sets for that, and human behavior is unpredictable. So I would just say you can definitely use it. It does open up an avenue for some of the places that don't have enough traffic where you can get some type of insight, but you still need the person to review that and make sure that is actually accurate to what's happening. So when you do see stuff out there I would just say be a bit cautious around predictive AI in general. So.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I will agree. I have 3 kids, and humans are very unpredictable. Yeah. You never know. I think they'd be similar. They're absolutely not. But I definitely have seen this trend where companies are leveraging, it's like A/B testing before you A/B test, and using the synthetic data and kind of test before you actually roll it out into the wild. And I think that'll help improve things. From a B2B standpoint, the tools that Lance talked about earlier, where you can take a PO and you can pop that into the system, and then all of a sudden you've got a cart ready for checkout. I think those types of tools are really interesting. And what I'm seeing in the B2B landscape is, at one point we thought AI was going to be this really cool thing that B2C brands were going to use, and it's all about buying through ChatGPT, and I don't think B2B brands care about that. And then as time's evolving, it's like all of our customers on the B2B side now have tooling that they can leverage to make their lives easier. And so the art of the possible here is crazy. And while most of the B2B brands we work with, they have kind of the Pareto principle, right? 80-20 rule, where 80% of their sales come from 20% of their customers. Those are their core customers, their valued customers. The other 20% comes from the long tail 80% of customers. So all this volume, 80% of folks, they may not have the same type of relationship with them. Where their core customers, where they're generating the bulk of their revenue, they have a really tight relationship with them, and they're not really seeing the need for these AI tools. But these long tail customers, need the ability to discover. They may not necessarily have the same contract pricing thresholds and agreements in place that those core customers have. They are starting to build their own agents to do evaluations, pricing checks, look for these products across multiple different sources where they could source products from a distributor, as an example. And so I think in the world of B2B, it's really interesting that the tooling is allowing these B2B customers or buyers that would buy from the B2B manufacturers or distributors to start shopping in a completely different way. There's areas like EDI. We've had EDI for years. Maybe some of you that run brands or have worked with brands, it's expensive. Nobody really wants to deal with it. It's old technology. It won't die. I don't know if it'll ever die, but there's an opportunity for agents to displace this, because now you're giving a more low-cost offering. And so between having a buyer agent interacting with your, brand or your company MCP, you can expose so much to them that they may not need EDI. So we're in a weird, I don't know where this is all going to go, but I think the tooling that B2B customers or buyers now have to interact with the distributors and manufacturers they shop from is going to change things dramatically, maybe more dramatically than what we see in B2C.
Yeah, I would agree on that too. And you made an interesting point, especially when you're speaking about like dropping in PDFs or past orders, different things like that. We're hearing that from existing clients now, where they're looking to start leveraging some of that B2B play, some of it, in this case, to get rid of that human element where the mistakes are made. It's also allowed them to reallocate resources within the company to not have to be so much order taking and things like that. So I think you're spot on with that. And Ali, I'm going to start with you on this one. So obviously we've talked about this. There's a million AI tools out there, personalization engines, recommendation engines. You name it, AI search, chatbots, blah, blah, blah. We all know too, adding more technology and tools doesn't necessarily automatically mean a better experience, right?
No, it does.
So, well, maybe from the commerce standpoint, we've got a lot we can offer up here. But when you think about this and the journey, when it feels cohesive to the customer rather than just automated, what are you seeing from your side of things, or what are you seeing in the industry? And then I'll have Lori follow up as well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I used to work, kind of on the agency SI side of the house. So we did some strategy, more commerce strategy, not like big strategy like a Bain or McKinsey, but. And our chief commerce strategist worked at Wolverine Brands for a number of years, worked at Bain, McKinsey, was the global leader of digital for Converse. And he would tell me all the time, if I listened to every tool that would give me 2, 3, 4% lift, I would just make my numbers all the time. I'd just go add it to the recommendations engine, I'd add the search thing, I would do all these things, and my stack would be full of a bunch of extra tools, and I have a ton of extra JavaScript on my site, and I'd be killing it. So I think similarly, it's the same paradigm with AI, that there's a lot of tools that are available to folks, and you could get those through us. You could get those through third parties that are, ISV or partners of ours in the tech community that deliver those. And it's really difficult to know which one is right for which brand. It's situational, and people are experimenting. I'd go back to data enrichment is the one that we're clearly seeing where there's a lot of opportunity, whether that's through us or some of the other tools that are out there, because it's undeniable that discoverability has changed. I mean, that's the thing that I think we have seen. Whether people are going to en masse purchase all their products through a LLM, I don't think that's the case. But just like the introduction of social added another channel that we had to think about, it kind of made our lives harder in the B2C world, and maybe arguably in the B2B world. Agentic to me is just another thing that we're putting on our, not us, the world is putting on our customers, and we have to adapt to it. So it's making everyone's life a little bit harder. And the one thing that's clear is that making sure your brand shows up the way you want it. It's almost like merchandising, that's merchandising your product for the way it shows up across these different channels, whether that's SEO, whether that's on your PDP, whether that's to enrich this data and push it into your own search for site search, and most certainly for discoverability across LLMs. That is the clear thing that we're seeing people engage on today.
Yeah, I would say on the social, it's definitely made life more difficult. I mean, having kids with TikTok shop and all the things, and the credit card bills come through with the weirdest thing and talk about unpredictable. Well, maybe it is predictable with the teenagers that they're going to rack up stuff shopping.
Definitely going to ask for money. That's
yeah. Lori, same question to you.
Yeah.
On the, what are you seeing actually feels cohesive to the customers rather than just automated?
So I would just say, kind of in general, it's just following on from that, really echoing the same kind of point, where something else that's kind of happening with that is people are starting with the tools and not with the problem. So I would just say that you need to kind of work backwards with your funnel. So identify where your friction is, and then figure out the tools that are available to then apply that to that situation. So you're not just putting everything in place for everything, and to just be kind of mindful again of novelty effect, because there is all this hype. And people want you to put all the things on there, but that can just buy you more problems, and it can hurt your customer experience in the long run. So to just kind of be mindful of that as well. And then there's also a lot of considerations around AI that I'm not sure people talk enough about. It's things like environmental impact, cost, capacity. So it's just to be really conscious of what you're doing and strategic with what you're doing, rather than just throwing it all in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. The other thing that I think about when it comes to the tools that our customers are interested in, or what we're starting to see, is certainly we talked about the companion. Everybody wants some kind of co-pilot in there to make their life easier. On the brand side, people are looking at, especially larger companies, brand agents. How can I leverage what's in the platform and my back office systems through an MCP, and then create a brand agent where my customers don't necessarily go to the search bar, but they're interacting with that agent on site to learn about the brand and to shop more effectively. And so, there's folks that have some of these sort of standard that you could license, but now we're starting to see, well, should I build or buy that?
Right.
And we're starting to see more of, at least the larger companies, look to build that experience. And so it'll be interesting to see how that trickles down to mid-market companies and small business. Will it be a boxed experience that they're just going to buy from a vendor, or could they just as easily use the tools that are out there to build their own brand agents and work with, companies like Codal and some of the other great systems integrators and agency partners that we have out here to customize those experiences, because it is a user experience for that particular brand or that company.
Right. And I think too, you both hit on it with the technologies and, it could raise my revenue 2% and so on and so forth. I think what we see when we get into discoveries a lot of times where we'll have an end user or a merchant bringing us the tech stack that they believe because all these salespeople got to them before. And so as we get through discovery, as we get through discovery, we can actually start checking things off, saying, this is redundant, you don't need this, it may not work with this, and really start kind of taking some of that down. Like if you can do everything with 7, why have 12, right? More things to break down, more cost.
Yeah.
So, and then the final question, the one that's always entertaining when we look into the future, looking ahead, the way customers find experience and brand shifting, we see that the journeys are starting and sometimes ending inside AI itself. What does that mean for how brands should think about customer experience, and really what should teams be doing now to get ready?
Okay.
Lori,
I'm
this
giving
is
you a
all
softball
This is all
question.
you.
Predict the future,
So-
Lori.
Okay.
You've got this.
So journeys are going to increasingly be start and end within the kind of generative AI element itself. And what that means is that there is going to be a point in time when some people are never going to see your website. They're not going to have that experience at all. So to me, for this, two things matter. How your brand shows up inside AI experience that you're not really fully able to control. And then how are you going to be able to test your AI features with rigor in that experience? So something with Codal is what we're looking at now is kind of integrating a two-pronged approach into our testing methodology. So to me, the brands that succeed here aren't necessarily going to be the ones in the future with the best landing pages, but they are going to be the ones who figure out how to show up well within those generative AI experiences that they don't have full control over. That's how it.
Yeah, agreed. I think you hit that well. I mean, hit that on the head. And again, it's like there's multiple surfaces now that you have to think about. And some people are going to go to your site and shop like they normally did. Some people are going to find you through Instagram or some other, TikTok, whatever it is. And then others may find you through an LLM, and they're going to want the ability to purchase there. And so you have to make sure, data is king. Arguably, content is king right now. Make sure you provide that. And it's not just the content that you generate yourself, but it's your customers' user-generated content. It's going to help influence what those answer engines think about you. And so,
Yeah, and figuring out how to optimize what that output is within there.
100%.
It's going to be a massive shift for the future. So.
We've learned a lot today. We're not out of jobs. There's still a lot of work to be done.
I mean,
here.
you might be out of a
Things are
job.
yeah, I could be.
I could be out of a job,
You could be,
but
yeah.
Lori's not out of a job.
She's the
Who
safe
knows?
line.
There's time.
We have a couple of minutes left, so I'll open it up to the audience if there's any questions for Lori or Ali.
Are we starting to see like any kind of early indicators or trail of breadcrumbs kind of thing as it pertains to what we're finding out that LLMs preference, right? Because it's all well and good to say, oh, we got to look forward to showing up in LLMs. Okay, what are even just the kind of glimmers of what best practice is starting to look like?
Yep. So it's going to be probably not a helpful answer, but I would say we're still sort of in that space to try to figure out what that is. A lot of the data availability on like AI and LLM conversion itself is not readily available that I've seen anyway. If I'm wrong, somebody tell me. But that's been gate kept from a lot by the companies, really, in my opinion. So we don't even know how well this stuff is actually converting, but it's being pushed anyway. So in time, I think we'll be able to get some more leverage on that. There are a few things that people are doing around like schema markups and stuff, but from my perspective, coming in from a experimentation conversion side of things, it's still a bit like we're figuring it out.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, this is not my area of expertise. I would encourage, let's track down Sharon Gee and ask that question to her. But the marriage of structured and unstructured data tends to be one that I think that they rank more highly. And the Q&A aspect, making sure that the question and answers that you have there have the enough content, the right kind of content for them to be able to contextualize. Because, if I go there as an example and I'm asking questions of the LLM, it's not just like, hey, I need a black t-shirt. It's like, literally I did this the other day. My cousin, she's getting married in New York in August. This is the groom's family. This is what should I wear? What's appropriate, and recommend a suit for that particular occasion. And, if you don't have a whole lot of context, you're not going to be able to answer that question well. And it's surprising some of the answers I got. Some of them are kind of generic and some of them are a little bit more spot on with the types of blends and so on and so forth. I would love to, at some point in time, it'd be smart enough to be like, you should actually just wear this because it's more fitting for not just the weather, but the occasion and the types of people you might be around. I don't think we're there yet, but it's just an example of where that unstructured data and tuning the Q&A will help provide the right context to the engine. So context, I think, is key within how they rank and think about things.
Yeah, and just following on from that really quickly, I think just making sure your SEO is like rock solid will help you from this point moving forward. As long as you can get that in like perfect condition, as near perfect condition as you can, that will go a long, long way, at least for right now. So.
Cool, perfect. Well, thank you both. Appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. Lori coming over, Ollie taking time out of meetings. We will be around if you have any additional questions. Lori will be at our booth, and you can find Ollie walking around. So thank you all for joining us.
Awesome. Thanks for spending time with us. Thanks, everyone.